All right, let's now bring in legal analyst Elton Hart from the University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic to weigh in on this matter being struck off the roll. Elton, thank you so much for your time. So this matter has been on the court roll since 2022. I mean, was this judgment expected, just given that last week, of course, we saw legal representative for Karen Moore, requesting that the court strike this matter off the roll due to several failed appeals by the former president in the private prosecution's case?
Anati, yes, if one looks at it, and obviously there is an appeal pending the full bench's decision to say, is the private prosecution legal or lawful or not? So for me, I would think that once that court has made a determination to say it's lawful and Mr. Zuma can proceed with his private prosecution of Billy Downer and Karen Mon, then we're good to go. But to keep something also on the court roll, it brings about legal costs for the state and unnecessary administration costs. And once we get clarity there, then we will know, should we proceed with the private prosecution or it's off the table. And people should not think now Mr. Zuma has lost his case. This, what it actually just means, is just this matter is just pended based or given the outcome of the Supreme Court of Appeal to say that he's got a lawful prosecution. Once that, and you could hear it from the judge's order already to say that the moment that date is determined, if the judgment of the full bench is set aside by the Supreme Court of Appeal, they must present themselves on a date that will be determined in future. So this is not a victory for nobody. Nobody's rights is prejudiced here. It's just that you don't want to keep something on the court roll that's already clogged on the court roll, while we could have dealt with other cases that's a trial ready and ripe for hearing.
Let's look at those possible scenarios, and especially the favorable how favorable it will be for the former president. I mean, as you rightfully said, the judge ruled that, his judgment is pending Zuma's appeal in the Constitutional Court against a court order that the private prosecution is invalid. It is also important to note, I would think, Elton, to reflect that Zuma has already lost appeals against the enforcement order in the Supreme Court of Appeal as well as the Constitutional Court. So how then is today's development likely to play out if, and as you also pointed out, the Apex Court rules in Zuma's favor?
No, indeed. If the Supreme Court of Appeal rules in Mr. Zuma's favor, then it will mean that Karen Mon and Billy Downer has to present themselves to the High Court, and the private prosecution will then start with Mr. Zuma being the prosecutor, and he would most probably appoint somebody to privately prosecute Billy Downer and Karen Mon for privately leaking his confidential information. On the other hand, if they find that his private prosecution of Billy Downer and Karen Moore is unlawful, then it means it might come down to the end of the road for him. But I know he's most probably going to then say, I'm going to approach the Constitutional Court because here one of my rights has been infringed, my right to a fair trial and those type of things. And then there will be a constitutional element that he can go to the Apex Court in Braamfontein to say that I want you guys to say that the Supreme Court of Appeal was incorrect in saying my prosecution is unlawful and it cannot stand. So that is one of the things, or one of three things that can happen in this scenario. They say, okay, unlawful, and he stops, or he can go forward, or they say it's a lawful prosecution and they have to present themselves before Judge Nkosinati so that they can actually now proceed with the private prosecution in the High Court.
Just talk to us again and remind us, Elton, about how the process with the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is going in as far as that private prosecutions by Zuma as well.
Now, obviously, there was also a thing, and I think that one is a little bit of a far cry, that Mr. Zuma wants to, the former president wants to now prosecute the current president. Because first one has to look at the current president as executive head of the state. Did he have a duty when somebody complains to him as the head of a state to say, listen, yeah, my private information is being used in violation of my rights? Does he have a duty to act? Or is it just simply that Mr. Zuma was complaining to the wrong person? And I think, yeah, Mr. Zuma was complaining to the wrong person because the person that he had to complain with was law enforcement authorities and eventually the NPA to say that here is this prosecutor and this legal journalist that's doing X, Y, and Z with my information, and I want to lay a charge against them because they cannot do this. It's against the law. And based on that, they can actually But to go to the president and say that just because I'm a former president, I want you to act as president now, to say that my information is illegally used, that is going to set a bad precedent, because then it means that every citizen in this country, when their phones get hacked or they get cyber bullied, they can now go to the president and say, Mr. President, as the executive head of the state, you should act because my information is used unlawfully without my consent. So I think that one is a little bit of a far-fetched, that he's going to succeed with any, even if he takes it on appeal to the Constitutional Court, he's not going to get any far to say that he cannot privately prosecute the current president for failing or his non-action when he complained to him about his information being used illegally or unlawfully, whatever way you want to put it.
Fundamentally, Elton, I mean, we are here because of the former president's corruption case. How will this appeal process now before the Court likely then to further delay Zuma's corruption case, which is, of course, related to the multi-billion rand arms deal with French arms company Thales?
Now, you can remember from his arms deal case, he raised a plea in terms of 106 of the Criminal Procedure Act, where he said that Advocate Billy Downer doesn't have any legal standing to actually prosecute him. He doesn't hold title. So this appeal stems from there. And once the court has determined that he's got title, and then this private prosecution of him is not sort of half in line with the legal principles and it's unlawful, then obviously that trial can start. But as long as these appeals happen, it will delay the start of that trial, because Advocate Billy Downer is then the lead prosecutor in that case that's actually going to present evidence. So all these appeals will then surely make sure that that case is halted and that horse is bolted until the Supreme Court of Appeal rules on these appeals, or it might go to the Constitutional Court if Mr. Zuma appeals and he gets an unfavorable decision from the SCA. So that is all that is like dependent on what Mr. Zuma is currently doing in the various courts.